This is part 7 of the serialized content framework created by Caspian Studios. And for this one, we are talking about podcasts, video podcasts, and serialized content KPIs. So this is your cheat sheet of what we think is important. Obviously, you have your own KPIs that you think are important as well. So would love to explore that. But we have found that these are the top 3 things that you can do. And it's pipeline influence, engagement, and experience. And we'll dig into each of these. First off, pipeline influence. Pipeline is the number one thing for every B2B marketer. No matter if you're in content, if you're in brand, if you're in demand, whatever you're in, pipeline is the most important thing. And so we focus on 3 pieces of this: pipeline sourced, pipeline accelerated, and pipeline revived. So sourced is to say, what are the brands that have had no connection with our company, that are not in an opportunity, that we are sourcing 100% from the podcast? And so we have seen video podcasts and serialized content work really well to source cold pipeline, to be very targeted in that way. The second one is pipeline accelerated. So pipeline acceleration is something where it is an account that you are talking to right now, but might need a little bit of help to get it further down the line, to get it faster down the line, or to get a meaningful touch in between now and when the budgeting season is. So if they say they're going to buy in 6 months from now, and you have 6 months to wait and time kills all deals, what you can do is you can get them on your podcast series at, let's say, month 3 of that conversation. And then you have some sort of in between and a meaningful touch with that organization that's not purely a sales touch, and it's not purely a passive touch of sending them information or inviting them to webinars. This is something where you're co-creating it with them and you're putting a meaningful touch in and having a meaningful experience. The third one is pipeline revived. So this is something where an account goes cold, you've emailed them 10 times, they haven't responded, the salesperson is probably just being annoying at this point, and you want to engage them in a different way. And we have seen this work really well to look at pipeline revivals, to say, hey, what accounts did we bring back from the dead, by having our producer reach out to those accounts to say, hey, we think you'd be a great fit to be on this podcast. Here's what we'd love for you to talk about. Here's our audience. Here's some other guests just like you. Here's the size. Would you be interested? And we have seen that work really well to revive those conversations. And then that producer can have a really good conversation to say, hey, by the way, I know that we've been selling to you, and I hope that wasn't annoying. And they say, oh, no, it wasn't annoying at all. I was just on vacation, or whatever they were doing. And you can revive those accounts. Or to say, hey, no, we just straight up have no budget for the next 6 months. If I get any, I'll let you know, but we're absolutely stone cold right now. The second KPI that's really important is engagement. So this is your views and listens on the apps that people are listening. YouTube views, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any of those type of applications where people consume content. You want to track this over time. Now, you don't necessarily need to get really granular on the per episode to episode basis to say this episode did 17% better. Is that a meaningful statistic? I find that stuff that you can work yourself up a little bit too much trying to dig into the data there on episode to episode, because at the end of the day, these people, some people are just more popular than you realize, and when they share something on LinkedIn, their episode does better. And like, those are the sort of things that you can kind of drive yourself crazy. But generally what you want is total engagement on your series in a given month by month basis. Is it something where you are building a consistent, repeatable audience? And you want to figure out who the heck is listening to that. So that's the second piece of this, is what are the accounts who are engaging with this? It is super important to try to figure that out. And it's very, very hard to do. So luckily now there are tools that allow you to do that. And we use those here at Caspian to figure out who is listening to these shows, who is engaging with the content in those apps. The second piece of that engagement is on your website. So obviously website traffic, website engagement, are these people coming to your landing page? Are you sending them to your landing page? That's something that you can track as well. Most people do not engage with podcasts or videos series on your website. They're mostly going to do that in app, but getting them back to your website is really important for you. and important to track who that person is and getting them to engage in other pieces of content. So you really want to track that as well. The next piece here is social engagement. And this can either be owned or earned engagement. And if it's the owned engagement, this is what is this traffic, the social engagement from these posts on your channels, your company channels, or the channels of the executives on your team or the people that are promoting it. And then the other part of this is the social engagement on the earned channel. So this is other people promoting it. And what we've seen here is that you just want to be able to track both these things. Owned, pretty easy because you can measure those, the account, your own company accounts and how well that is doing. We have one customer where their video podcast outperforms any other type of social that they do, and that's really great. And it's great for them that it drives so much engagement. But then when other guests share those posts, a lot of times we don't know how many people that reached. We can look at how many people engaged with it, how many liked it, how many people commented, but we don't know the exact number that those posts reach unless we go back and ask the person and say, hey, by the way, did that do really well? So you could do that, but it might be a little bit annoying if you do that. So it's totally your call. We want to look at social engagement as it relates to the overall brand. Again, I wouldn't get like overly dogmatic with trying to figure out the exact social engagement. We just want to have a really strong halo effect for the show and for the company. The final KPI is experience. So I think about experience as audience NPS and guest NPS. Is the audience liking the content? Do they like what you're doing? Does the community like what you're doing? And then the second part of this is guest NPS. Do the guests actually like coming on the show? Do the PR teams like working with you? Did it come out good? Is it quality? Those two things, audience and guests, are so important to you because they are your listeners, they are your prospects, they are your customers. A final KPI here, which is more of an anecdotal one, is getting quotes from your guests and just simply asking them, did you have a good time? What could we improve? Those things and getting those anecdotal information is really valuable to see if your show is performing well.